I'm Martin Foster, Principal Consultant at Team Forum.
I'm Maria Muir. I lead Sooner Saver Happier here in Asia Pacific.
Here to talk about the business agility report that was published last month. The second most commonly referred to challenge we saw from the business agility report was challenges with organizational structures. And this is where we're going to look at, those complex siloed structures that people have a lot of issues with just navigating and understanding, but even like seeing where the different people are and how this comes together to form the organization and the workforce you've got to deliver. With a big call out here being like often too many dependencies inside the organization or inside the flow of work. So your flow bounces between a lot of different business units before you end up getting to the end, which is like delivering value to your customer. A small counter trend to this one we've observed in the industry is also like maybe too much restructuring. So one way to improve organizational structures is to make changes to the teams or reporting lines, but there is also a bit of a detection that sometimes this is done too frequently, and maybe there's other means we could be taking to understand the work or make value streams visible. Maria?
So I think if the last kind of challenge was all around how do we create that focus and leaders leaning into that, I think what this one's actually all about is how do we unlock flow. So we know that to achieve the outcomes that we need to deliver, we actually need to work together with others. And so this is then where kind of horizontal collaboration is key, or that cognitive diversity. So how do we then get the right inputs from like a product team or a customer experience team or delivery, engineering? We need all those skills in order to then deliver on that outcome. But what we need as well is actually to align on that shared outcome. So what is that common goal? And then what is the set of metrics to then go after that we're all driving towards? And if we don't have that aligned incentive, we actually can't have clear priorities. And so that's I guess without that, that's where we add the dependencies, that's where we add the complexity, that's what makes it hard to get stuff done. Where it's then filled with wait times, we're filled with tension to try to align what those priorities are. So we really need to then break down those silos to then stop managing the dependencies and to break them instead. And this is where have been spending a bit of time talking about, well, what is the operating model and how might we then think about what that looks like? What is the design of the teams and the network of the teams in something more akin to an end-to-end value stream? So these are teams that have that shared outcome, that have that alignment, that have the cross-functional skills and capabilities together, that have ownership over the technology that's required in order to then deliver on that outcome. We're clear on who the customer is. We've got the right kind of data and processes that support us. And that really then is the unlock. And I've seen that this is actually the number one thing that if we solve for this, we'll be able to increase throughput, we'll be able to increase flow, we'll be able to actually reduce the cost of delay and deliver better value to customers, improve business performance, and all the rest of it. So it's not a ninja move. It's really the fundamental unlock, this one.
Nice. I think like a big, before we look at value or talk about value streams, I think one of my big learnings from the past decade is that like large organizations and everything you're talking about is actually really hard to understand. Like large 1,500 plus, let alone the 10,000s and 50,000s and hundreds. And something that we've noticed and personally really hit is that leaders are often surprised to learn that they can't see their entire workforce, right? It's not visible from one place. Often joint ventures, merger and acquisition style scenarios, even some multinationals only have the workforce in pools. And we've worked with a lot of companies in Australia that have their workforce in two separate areas. One of them is the employees and the other one's the contractors. And that's like 50-50. How do I bring this all together? So I think it's like a very important first starting place is to understand where is that workforce? What's your capability that you have? Because that's the necessary unlock to start to see value streams, right? A lot of organizations, as they get bigger, don't deliver purely based on reporting lines. They tend to come together as a team structure, a value stream that's got visibility to the end customer and, has a concise part of that product flow. Then a few other teams like sort of composing that together. So as a leader, once you can see all your people, then that delivery part becomes visible. You can see the workforce that you'd actually have available in the value stream. And I really think that has to be like stressed hard because where we've seen a lot of challenges with org structure, it's because leaders are making the best possible decisions with way imperfect information. You bring this together, the workforce is visible, and we can start connecting back to the strategy and work we were talking beforehand. And, big challenges like WIP interdependencies become a lot more manageable. Obviously, like tools like Teamform allow leaders to see all these parts. So as the workforce gets assembled and reconciled, you don't need a perfect picture to start, but then you can start composing and seeing the value streams and how they might interact with one another.
And so just like I think one of the first baseline steps is, well, what is the work? So we can
Yeah.
visualize it. like I think Martin, exactly to your point is who are your teams and where are they and what are they comprised of and what do they look like and what work are they working on and what should they be working on? Like that's again almost a baseline hygiene element that is needed.
Excellent. And we've really seen that with like we're working with a media company that's gone a lot more remote in the past few years. And then it's really hard as you've got this like value stream that's delivering next generation streaming and broadcast capabilities. If your workforce is spread across a couple of countries, how do you see those people if they're never going to really meet physically in person? It's really good to be able to say, hey, this is the location where everyone comes together. This is how they come through in the teams. This is the time zone that they're working in, right? And like all the things that are sort of not obvious if you don't interact with individuals like on a day-by-day basis can really be brought to life if you can see it in the tooling. We've also helped like financial organizations as they pivot from this like line management project model to more this persistent value stream delivery. As you start putting a couple thousand people in these larger value streams, it's really helpful for the different leaders and the different delegations and leadership inside that structure to understand the workforce capabilities they've got so that you can align it back to the work and those overall like strategic outcomes.
So I think our suggestions, I think to anyone who's watching is probably two things on this one. I think
Yeah.
it's one, who are your teams, and what do they look like right now? And the second thing would then be in the context then of delivering value across the idea to value life cycle, how are you actually doing that? So if you were to take an example of, I want to be able to launch a new product or make a change to a product, how are you doing that? What teams are engaged at the moment to do that, all the way from idea to concept to planning to design to build, to testing and release and launch and all of the steps. Who's actually needed in that, and is that all one team? Or is it actually a handful of teams? Because if you haven't then thought of it from an end-to-end value perspective, chances are it's a handful of teams. But then how might we then start thinking about how do we organize or define what our team should be in a little bit of a different way to then start breaking those dependencies? And one of the free quick learns that we have available on the SSH website is the flow mapping one, which will help you to do that second piece there, which is a great, I guess, helpful visual radar where it then shows the bottlenecks. So you can then start having those kind of conversations because if our teams are designed in that way, then these are the impacts that we're starting to face as a result of that, which then, allows for some of that conversation. Well, what do we do next?
Excellent. And then if you can take a flow map and your current workforce, if it's being like first structured as teams, or you already have like a value stream or a set of teams, and you know you need to make changes to get this better visibility, it helps to have the commensurate tooling with that to be able to track, okay, well, if I have this current workforce, what changes might we make? What might we make over the next quarter? What direction are we going to be going over the next year to sort of achieve this state that we think is better set up to like sense and respond to the market and give clear visibility to the customer and hence help those delivery outcomes.
Absolutely, because then we don't need to do that in a spreadsheet, or we don't need to do that in Miro. We're doing it in a way that actually helps accelerate through that design, because chances are you're not going to get it right the first time, and it's going to need to change in a period of time as well. So the ability to adapt and like you say, sense and respond is also in the context then of what does that teaming look like?